Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a beer from a brewer that it's really been quite a while since we've reviewed one of their beers, only done a few, and that is Martin House Brewing Company out of Fort Worth, Texas. Today we're jumping into a beer called Columbiana. It is an Imperial Stout that has been rum barrel aged and has added cherry puree, sweet cherry puree, and flake coconut. And I normally have really tall cans or bottles. Today, just a little 12-ounce can, but rightfully so. This is a high ABV in this little can, 13% to be precise. So before we even jump into the beer, I have to say, I personally thought that the artwork on this is some of the neatest I have ever seen on the label of a beer. And to be fair, I am a massive fan of comic art and anime, and this very much looks like that kind of overall theme. Whoever did the artwork on this label, bravo, it's really awesome. I hope the camera picks that up. I'm keeping this can. I really, really like it. So, just a little 12-ounce can. We're going to use our nice all-purpose Sam Adams glass, which will most likely not have a problem holding this whole beer. Depends on how aggressive this head goes, but this nice tulip ought to work well for a big ABV stout like this with these additives. So I'm expecting a lot of character out of the aroma and out of the flavor profile. So let's be careful as we pour this. We'll start it straight in, back it off, go straight down the middle at an even pace, give it a chance to form a head naturally. And we're just going to back it there. I will be able to get this whole can in here, but it did form quite a nice head to start. So we'll just let it settle. We can always top off later. Visually, I'm trying to make a habit to not hold this directly in front of my face. It's so hard to break. Yeah, this is pitch black. Holding it right up to my set lights, I can't see through it at all. It's a very thick, very dark beer, 13% ABV. I'm not surprised. It did form quite a nice head here. I can't really see much activity in terms of carbonation throughout, but on the side where I can see a little bit, it's very fine beads, but it's actually moving pretty quickly. So I'm not sure if that's going to collapse this head from underneath or not, but we'll see. But it did form quite a nice one. So yeah, don't get a ton of rum barrel aged beers. We've had a few as of late, so let's get over this for a full sniff. Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, so the aroma coming off of this is massive. It's massive. And really, it's dominated by coconut. That's the first thing you get. And immediately behind that is rum. And it almost puts you in mind of like a coconut rum, which is pretty common type of rum you can find. And it would be hard to differentiate with the toasted coconut and the rum barrel if it was standard rum, spiced rum, coconut rum. But it smells really, really nice together. You can pick out the cherry as well. It's definitely a little more subtle in the aroma profile than the barrel and the coconut, but it's extremely pronounced on that coconut and that rum. I didn't expect that. Coconut's always nice in a beer. I love it, but I've never smelled one that has that big of an intensity of coconut in the nose. It smells unbelievably good. Yeah, okay, so underneath that, very strong, slight even booziness coming off of the barrel side of this. The sweet cherry puree they added is more subtle, but it's definitely discernible. But I'm trying to pick up some of this underlying malt bill. There's just a slight suggestion of roast, but the aromas from the barrel and the coconut in particular, and certainly the cherries, are just so big and bold and pronounced that it's really hard to pick out the malt bill on the nose. Be that as it may, it smells fantastic. And yeah, kind of as I suspected, pretty quick beads moving up. The head did already settle down a bit, but there was a nice bit of cling. There's a really nice, lush, creamy pad floating on top. So it just settled down, got out of the way, but it's not completely gone. So safe to jump right in. We're going to see what this one's about. Oh, man. I tell you. Oh, wow. While, while I'm letting this settle and just absolutely reveling in the incredible sensory experience here, before we jump in and talk specifics, I got to say the last several beers I've reviewed, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, I feel like I've won the craft beer lottery. I have reviewed some amazing beers over the years, but the last several that I've randomly just chosen to review have all been stellar. This is another of just that stellar tier of beer. Holy crap. I mean, this is huge, guys. The aroma is huge. The flavor profile is huge. It is big. It is bold. It is in your face. You get almost even parity of what comes through in the aroma, but amplified in the flavor profile. What you get up front with that coconut initially on the nose really comes through heavily on the front in the flavor profile as well. And then immediately behind that, the rum. The same is true in the profile. How I smelled a slight bit of booziness from the barrel, I get a little slight bit of booziness in the flavor profile. How the sweet cherry puree comes through, but it's, you know, not as prevalent as the coconut in the barrel. The same is true in the flavor profile. So the balance on this, how they put it together, is absolutely here. It's top tier and it's all together. Now, while I was able to pick up a little bit of the underlying roast in the aroma, I am pleased to say it is a lot more discernible in the flavor profile. And yeah, this is driven kind of by the additives in the barrel, but it's no secret. Everything here comes through clearly and in full force. And I don't know what their exact balance was, but it kind of staggers, and then all of these flavors just meld together. And I don't know if they went back and tweaked, if this was the original thought that they had for the balance, but whatever they did to it, whatever their balance is, yeah, it's on the money, guys. It's on the money. This is a seriously good stout right here. All right, so I was blown away yet again by another beer. So we're going to jump back in for a second sip. We're going to pick apart this body and mouthfeel. Balance we already talked about. It's impeccable. So we'll really focus in on body mouthfeel. Make sure I didn't miss any nuance in the flavor profile. Then we'll talk about this finish. But first sip, unbelievably good. Take two. Okay, so in terms of the body and the mouthfeel, this is a 13% ABV beer, and it's got some heft, but it's not quite as heavy as I would expect for 13%. I would say it's really just kind of hovering around the medium heavy mark. It doesn't feel quite as weighty as I expected. The mouthfeel, though, there is a good bit of resistance. This is not one that gets overly silky or creamy, but there's a little bit of a foamy sensation as you agitate around the palate. And while it feels like a nice bit of thickness as you're moving it around, the overall kind of viscosity that you don't necessarily sense when you're agitating on the palate, you can really feel how it just coats the palate. You can feel it. It almost leaves behind like this thin beer film, and it's just pungent, intense beer flavor that just keeps pumping in after each sip, and it's fantastic. So texture and weight-wise, it's nice. The weight not quite as heavy as I expected, but the mouthfeel, very nice, very on point. In terms of re-intensification, anything that I missed? No, not really. It just re-intensified what I got from the first sip because it is indeed coating the palate that well. And yeah, what I got in the first sip just amplified again, and it's absolutely delicious. This is a very well put together, perfectly balanced beer for my money. And now we get to the finish. So this is a barrel-aged stout. As you might expect, as is typical with most barrel-aged stouts, they do have longer than average finishes. This one is no different. The big driver on this is twofold. It is the rum barrel, it is the coconut. Just like you got on the aroma, just like you got when you get into the sip, the same holds true on the back end in terms of the finish. It finishes where it started, and it's not pulling punches, it's not trying to hide what they did with it. What they did with it and how they made it is front and center in every aspect of the beer experience. The aroma, the texture, the flavor profile, the finish. This is just an extremely well-crafted beer. I absolutely love it. I don't drink enough beers that are rum barrel aged. They're a little harder to find. Not impossible, a little harder, but this is a really great example of how a rum barrel aged works. And it brings in a completely different character than the very common whiskey and or bourbon. I love them all. But I do really like when a well put together rum barrel aged beer comes across my desk, and this one is no exception. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up my scores. When we come back, we will get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. This was Martin House Brewing Company's Columbiana, a rum barrel-aged Imperial Stout that was brewed with sweet cherry puree and toasted coconut. This one clocked in at 13% ABV. Martin House Brewing is based in Fort Worth, Texas. So, wow, what a great beer. I really enjoyed this. There's not a ton of rum barrel-aged beers out in the market compared to, say, whiskey or bourbon. There's a ton of those. Rum you really got to look for, kind of like tequila. You can find them, but they don't pop up as often. So really glad when I saw this one from Tavour, it was not yet sold out. This was a beer that did extremely well across the board. So I'll just go down the line, the categories where it did get perfect, and we'll stop and talk about where it did not. So aroma, it did get a perfect 10 out of 10. Taste, it also got a perfect 10 out of 10. Then the first category it did not get a perfect score was in the body. So this was a 13% ABV Imperial Stout. And yes, it was above average in terms of weight and presence and heft, but for the ABV range, 13 is pretty stinking high. It wasn't quite as robust as I expected. This was really just kind of medium heavy, and I really did expect this to be a heavy beer. But, you know, it is what it is. Some people may prefer a lighter body, but for the ABV range, it was above average, but not quite there. So body, I did give a 7 out of 10. Next category is mouthfeel. It did get a perfect 10 out of 10 there. Finish, it also got a perfect 10 out of 10. Very long, absolutely fantastic. The next category and final category it did not get a perfect 10 out of 10 was the head and the retention. This was a category that it just missed by a hair. Frankly, it did pour a very nice head. Very thick, very lush, very creamy. But this one was pretty active in terms of carbonation, and it did kind of collapse it a little too early underneath. But again, this is a super minor nitpick. It was extremely close. I only docked 1 point here, so the head and retention did get a 9 out of 10. And then the final remaining 4 categories also all got perfect 10s out of 10. That was appearance, balance, feeling, and intangible, my subjective thoughts category, and example of style, which does bring the total score on Martin House Brewing Company's Columbiana to a 96 out of 100. Guys, this is an absolute top tier beer. I was blown away immediately by the impressive aroma, the balance of the aroma, and then jumping into the flavor, it was just next level. This is an extremely well-crafted beer. Honestly, I drink a lot of stouts, a lot of barrel-aged beers, and the basic, what they did with this, ingredients isn't that big of a deviation from many I've had, but I gotta say, this kind of was in its own category to most of these stouts that are even remotely similar that I've tried. This was very unique. The way that they put it together, the way it all worked together, made for a very interesting, unique, and completely fantastic stout experience. I highly recommend this one to my fellow big stout fans out there or barrel-aged beer fans. This is one, if you can grab it, get your hands on it. It came in a nice presented box with kind of the same label art on it, and it had 2 cans like this in it. So you get double the treat. I don't know if there's still any of these out in the market, but it's absolutely worth your time if you can find it. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.